Alright, jumping into lesson 11, adding mixed numbers. Yeah, and I think this one has like denominators and unlike denominators, so we'll go over some of both. Like denominators, it's pretty easy, very similar to adding fractions with like denominators. So yeah, we'll just get started with example 1. A hammerhead shark swam 2¼ miles. The next day it swam 1¼ miles. How many miles did it swim altogether? So they set up their problem of 2¼ plus 1¼ They broke it down into expanded form. So what they showed here was that they took 2¼ and just expanded it out. So they had a whole plus a whole plus a fourth. That's all they did. They took 2¼ and wrote it as a whole plus a whole plus 1/4. And the same thing with 1¼ they added one whole from here and then 1/4 from there. So their first step was to group the wholes and the fractions together. So once they took it and expanded it out, they grouped the whole numbers together and the fractions together. They added those whole numbers together to get 3. And then they added the fractions together. Again, that denominator isn't going to change since it's the same, to get 2/4. Once they did that, all they did was simplify 2/4, and they said that was the same thing as 1/2, right? We can write that even simpler because 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. So the hammerhead shark swam 3½ miles total. So they showed that model. Again, they had 3 wholes plus 2/4, right? 3 wholes plus 2/4. Forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, so we'll try a couple more examples together so we can get the feel of it. Oops. Okay, example number 2 says the diagram shows the length of a sea turtle, probably crush. What is the total length of the sea turtle? So here they had 3 different numbers that we have to put all together and add. So they had 7/8 of a foot, 3¼ feet, and 1 1/8 feet. So again, step 1 is to make sure when we add fractions, they all have to have the same denominator. So 7/8 and 1/8 are fine, but 1/4 we can't add to it because it's not in the same denominator. So all they did was to change 1/4 to an equivalent fraction. They said that 4 goes into 8, and to get from 4 to 8, they're going to take the top and the bottom by 2. Once we do what to the bottom, we got to do it to the top also. So they took 3¼ times 2 on top and bottom. 3, that whole number stayed the same. All they did was change the fraction to 2/8. Now we're in business. So again, they wrote it out. They showed how our equivalent fractions, now we have fractions with the same denominator. They're going to put all of the whole numbers together. So they took this 3 and this 1 to put the whole numbers next to each other. Then they added up all the fractions to get an answer of 4 wholes plus 10/8, because 3 and 1 gave them 4. 7 plus 2 plus 1 gave them 10/8. And we know that 10/8 is an improper fraction because the number on top is bigger than the one on bottom. So all they did was to say that 10/8 is the same thing as saying 1 whole, because we know that 8/8 is going to be equal to 1 whole, and there's still 2 left over that got us to 10. So then we have 2 left over out of 8. So we had 1 whole plus 2/8 is how they showed it here off to the side as well. So now we have to put 4 plus 1 and 2/8, this number that we got here. Again, put the whole numbers together to give us 5 and 2/8. I'm going to show it down here. Last 2/8, we know that 2 can go into both 2 and 8, so I'm going to simplify it to divide the top and the bottom to give me a fraction of 1/4. So our total length of this sea turtle is 5 1/4 feet. 5 1/4. And this is going to take a little bit of practice, I know. I'm going to show you one more. And so we have 3 3/8 plus 2 1/2. This is the expanded version of it. They already showed you that 1/2 is equal to 4/8. Actually, I'm going to skip this. You know what? I'm going to go to one where we have to go ahead and do all the steps. So let's try number 4 together. So we have 5 1/12 plus 6 1/4. So your first step, you want to put the whole numbers together. So I'm going to say that 5 wholes plus 6 wholes. Okay? Then I want to put my fractions next to each other, 1/12 and 1/4. Now I know I can add my whole numbers together to get 11, but I can't add my fractions yet because they have different denominators. But if I notice that 4 goes into 12, I only have to change 1/4. So I'm going to say that 1/12 is going to stay the same, but I'm going to take 1/4 and make it so that the denominator is 12. So I'm going to take the top and the bottom, multiply it by 3 to give me 3/12. So 1/4 is equal to 3/12, but now I have a denominator that I can work with because it matches my other fraction. Now we have to put our fractions together. So we have 1 plus 3 gives us 4. So I have 11, just bringing that number down, plus 4 out of 12. And we're almost done. I know that 4/12 is going to simplify because the greatest common factor of 4 and 12 is 4. So I can go ahead and take the top and the bottom, divide it by 4. So my final answer is going to be 11 whole. And then I'm going to have 1, because 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So my final answer is 11 1/3. I know that's a lot of steps. Watch this video again if you need to, and good luck. See if I can get it stopped again, always the tricky part.